Hello, Bill.
Good afternoon, Matt.
You got your Judd Apatow look going. I've got the talented Mr. Ripley going.
I feel that that's an insult to Judd Apatow.
I feel like it's a real insult to Matt Damon, but hey, let's team up.
So a little later in the week for us, Thursday afternoon. Matt tends to flag. He needs his naps, so it gets a little crabby when we tape in the afternoon.
Yeah, I probably should have another cup of coffee in me, but I'm gonna push through this with just some water.
And I'm a little crabby because I did my taxes yesterday and it wasn't pretty. I never can get my estimated payments right.
Well, I thought you, as a big government liberal, would have prepaid. You waited till like the filing deadline for this.
I prepaid more than I prepaid a year ago, and I still didn't get it right.
I don't even know what's going on. My wife handles all that, and if they ever take me away, that's going to be my final plea. I know nothing.
But I am happy as a good liberal to pay my share of government, to contribute to government services. I tried to explain this to the children as I was explaining why I couldn't play with them in the afternoon.
You missed. Speaking of that, you should have been with us yesterday, man. I took my kids. I've been having lunch every week with my mom, and and I showed her. I showed her the latest Lincoln Project video. Not the latest, but maybe the best Lincoln Project video that starts off with Reagan talking about slipping the surely bonds of earth to touch the face of God, and then it's Bill Clinton talking about Oklahoma, and then it's George W. Bush saying, "Well, I can hear you," right. And then it's Obama singing "Amazing Grace," and then it's juxtaposed with Trump talking about taking over the streets or whatever. And I didn't see this, but my son said that as my mom was watching it, like he noticed like when Obama came on, she made like a facial expression, and it did. And my son said that he thinks her chances of voting for Trump went up after seeing that video. So she tells me she's still not voting for Trump, but I feel like it's the ad showing Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and portraying them in a good light didn't work. So I don't know what the effect of that ad is. I love that ad, by the way.
We had the Mad-ometer for a long time. We need a Grandma Lewis-onometer to see where she is. Because she's Pennsylvania. She's a swing voter.
She's Pennsylvania. She's still not voting.
She's not voting. That's her plan, to not vote.
I don't know, but she's still not voting for Trump.
Okay.
I've confirmed this. I confirm it each week because every week I'm afraid that I've lost her, and this week I was afraid that I did it on, not on purpose, but inadvertently by showing her that ad. It does make you wonder. It makes me wonder. Because I love that ad. I showed it. The reason my kids were encouraging me to show it to her is that I'd showed it to them many times, and they get to see Reagan and Bush in a heroic positive, but they get to see Bill Clinton and Obama in a positive light too. But maybe I just wonder if the effect of that is that there may be unintended consequences.
Well, I had a tweet earlier this week. So Lincoln Project, I think, raised $17 million for the quarter, which I think for an independent group is not too shabby. I mean, it's not the Biden number, of course, is a lot bigger. Forgive me if I don't have the number of my fingertips. I'll try to dig it up for you. But I posed the question on Twitter. I said, I think the Lincoln Project is an interesting tool to have in the kit. I'm not saying they're bad, but this does strike me as being another example of the progressive netroots, broadly defined, getting excited about the latest shiny object. I like this video I saw on Twitter. I'm going to give you all my money. And I'm not convinced that's the best way to allocate progressive donor resources. And this is also true insofar as Amy McGrath and Jamie Harrison are getting the most money of the Senate candidates, and candidates like Barbara Bollier in Kansas and MJ Agar in Texas, who just won her runoff, John Ossoff in Georgia, they're getting a lot less. And when I put up that True About Lincoln Project, there's a lot of Lincoln Project defenders out there, at least on Twitter, that argue, these are the best ad makers. They go places the Democrats, are unwilling or aren't smart enough to go. And we need them being at the tip of the spear. And they've also noted to me that they're planning to get involved in Senate races. They did a Bullock ad. They did an anti-Joni Ernst ad. They did an anti-McConnell ad. But my retort was, one, I don't know what their bread and butter is in the anti-Trump ads. I don't really know if what they do works on the Senate level. And I'm not even sure how much Senate campaign they're going to do. They might nominally be involved in these races, but I don't know. I would rather see the candidate themselves get that money to make sure they were being competitive and give it to an outside group. But I don't know if you have a thought, based on your interaction with your mother, is what they do good enough, interesting enough, novel enough to say, look, they deserve that money. They're a piece of the puzzle that Democrats didn't have before, and they should be well funded to do more of it.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this. One, I'm reading Paul Begala's book right now. It's not out yet, but it's coming out soon. And, Begala is a really smart political operator, and he tried to examine what he got wrong in 2016 about Trump. And what he came up with is a lesson that he learned from Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton had this line where he said, they're trying to make this election about my history. I want to make it about your future. And the point was that you should make a campaign about the lives of voters, not about the candidates' lives. And if that's true, that's sort of the central insight of this Begala book. And I'm hoping we can interview him, Bill. Maybe do one of our DM Zooms with him. But if Begala is right, then the Lincoln Project is not doing that. I mean, their ads are really all about Donald Trump and trying to disqualify him and show him as a bad actor. I mean, it's hard to imagine the election won't be about Trump, which is why I want to talk to Begala. I'd love to actually specifically, I don't know, I'm not all the way through the book, so I don't know if he addresses the Lincoln Project's ads. But I'd love to get his take. And he may say that his advice is more for what Joe Biden should be doing. But it's great to have these outside groups pushing the negative Trump message. I don't know, but it does go against his central thesis.
Well, this is a re-election campaign. There's going to be inherent focus on the incumbent. To the extent that it's a referendum on the incumbent, it looks like it would, that would help Biden to win by a considerable margin. And I think...
Right, but what he says is, I mean, just to explain, what Begala says is, what you should do is don't say, like, Trump's bad or he's incompetent. Say, like, his incompetence caused him to mess up the response to coronavirus. Therefore, you now are suffering with a bad economy and with a virus that could kill your family or so. You know what I'm saying? Make it about you. Make it about you.
Biden's ads and Biden's rhetoric and Biden's overall themes, I think, do that very, very well. Biden has an ad up in Texas now, which is all about, how we're all in this together and how we can fight the virus together. And I won't abandon you in this fight. So if Biden's doing that, I think it's fine for the Lincoln Project to do totally nasty, trolly ads designed to get in Trump's head and make him overreact.
Yeah.
I just think the Lincoln Project can do that on the cheap. They don't need $50 million. They're not up there yet, but if they were on this pace, this quarterly pace, they would get there. You know, they can do that for a very low price on Twitter, get free media coverage, and get Trump to respond. Whereas, you know, Biden has this one ad buy in Texas right now, coming on the heels of a New York Times article saying the campaign is hesitant to go all in on Texas because it's so expensive. It's 20 media markets. They're already going in full in Florida, which is also an extremely expensive state. If you want Biden to be able to spread the map as much as possible, he needs as much money as possible, so he's not forced into these trade-offs. So I would say, hey, give your money to Biden so we can play in Texas. And Lincoln Project's doing just fine with a few mil. They don't need gobs and gobs of money to do their piece of their small piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Well, and I do think their big deliverable is psychological warfare. I mean, it's getting in Trump's head. They put out ads that get played on MSNBC, CNN, and I'm sure a lot of other places. Trump sees them. It drives him crazy. Now, there could be, by the way, I think there could be an unintended consequence to that, right? So Trump has now fired his campaign manager, Brad Parscale, and replaced him with a better manager, probably, Bill Sepien.
Well, we'll see.
Well, look, Donald Trump is his own campaign manager. The election's about Trump, and Trump is not going to listen to anybody. So I think this only matters on the margins. But I think that it's a trade-up, probably. And so you could maybe it's actually bad that that the Lincoln Project helped, because they ran this ad showing that Parscale had a yacht and a Ferrari and all this stuff. And I'm sure that factored in. The big problem was the Oklahoma rally, which Parscale hyped, said there were 1 million people wanting tickets and there were 6,000 people who showed up. I'm not great with math, but that's not good. But I think the Lincoln Project did help Parscale out of the way, and it may end up being that actually helps Donald Trump's cause.
I mean, there's not a ton of examples where campaign shakeups help, but the examples do exist. John Kerry had a big shakeup in his 2004 primary campaign that worked out for him. I think McCain 2008 do a shakeup in the 2008 campaign.
Yeah, McCain 2008 did one, and McCain did another one. 2008 he definitely did one, right?
Well, the one in the primary helped him. Obviously, the general election didn't work out, but his campaign got pulled out of the dumpster in the primary successfully.
He was like carrying his own bags at one point in 2008.
But the last time we've had an incumbent president do a campaign shakeup in the summer of the general election campaign, I think, was George H.W. Bush in 1992. That was August, when James Baker got yanked out of being Secretary of State, got installed as Chief of Staff, but was given an unofficial campaign manager title. This was a time when Bush didn't even have a singular campaign manager. He had kind of a troika set up. I think someone had the manager title, but wasn't solely responsible for things. And then Baker kind of hovered over all of them for the home stretch. And
this is in 92.
92. And that obviously was not enough to save that campaigin, because the fundamental flaw was Bush himself in the economy.
He died years earlier, so
he died in 91.
Yeah. But he had been out of commission, I'm sure, for a while before that. So,
yes. So it's not a great sign that you're forced to shake up your campaign as an incumbent president in the summer. But theoretically, if you are trading up and that person does tighten up the ship, it could be a positive. But it would seem that the Lincoln Project desire is just to inject as much fear, paranoia, infighting as possible. Infighting that's already, it's like a Russian troll operation. The division in the country already exists, but if you can exacerbate it, that's to your end.
Well, and I don't know how much they're trying to divide America, but I think they are getting under Trump's, skin, and it's psychological warfare with Trump. And I do think that that's kind of working. And I mean, they're taking a page from Trump's own playbook and doing it against Trump. But like, are they really running ads? Like, how many points have they actually bought? Or are these ads just being produced very quickly, which give them credit. They turn things around very fast. Are they being produced very quickly and just being sent, on the web? Are they actually being targeted on Facebook, or is it just free publicity? I actually don't know.
I don't know either, but now they have more money now than before. So it may have been up to this point. It's largely been.
Well, let me just make the obvious point, though. How many people are on the payroll? I mean, there's at least like 5 top strategists, 5 top Republican strategists who are working on this. I don't know if they're getting paid. I assume they are. They ought to be, right?
It's not a charity operation. Someone's getting a salary. I mean,
someone's probably getting paid.
I'm not going to argue it's a grift without knowing more details, but that's something you do want to know, how much is real pocketing, how much is actually going to the ad buys. I would think they're sensitive to that and they're not going to overly skim off the top. But the bottom line is how much that money is going to go into ads that actually get seen by average voters, not just online, and do those ads actually, we know they can do ads that light up the resistance and get in Trump's head. We know that it works on that score. We don't have evidence that they actually can persuade a swing voter. And here's an example you point out where someone who is pulling away from Trump, Grandma Lewis, who now is like, that really didn't speak to me. Seeing Barack and Clinton, that was not tailored to me. And I'm not impressed with that.
Her takeaway was, I forget the exact word she used, but her takeaway was like, this is Democratic propaganda. And then she started to say like, well, there really weren't any Republicans represented there. And then she's like, except for Reagan and Bush. I'm like, well, how many presidents have there been in the last 40 years?
But a guy like Rick Wilson should know that. And I'm sure he does know that. I'm sure he knows that ad was not made to impress your mother. It was made to impress online progressives to give them money. Now, he may use that money to do ads that do get tailored to a more right-leaning swing voter. But we just don't know exactly what strategy they're going to use and how they're going to spread the resources around.
I think the danger is that the incentives are to get love from progressives, to build a brand, a personal brand and a corporate brand, to raise more money, to get attention. And all of those things could potentially be not necessarily at odds with beating Trump, but they may not exactly be the same thing. So that could be the temptation. I will tell you that there's, you could imagine Republicans are not happy with them, but I'm seeing people pointing out that, like Tim Carney at the Washington Examiner, not a huge Trump fan, and others are pointing out that like the top 2 or 3 donors to the Lincoln Project are big Democrats, and so the question arises, like, are they going to be like, let's say we beat Trump, and then when I say we, I'm using the royal never Trump we, like we as in the never Trumpers. Let's say we beat Trump. Not that I'm actively campaigning against him, but my columns probably don't help him any. Let's say that they beat Trump and then they decide to take on the illiberal left. Will these donors still be on board, or are these donors simply interested in taking out a Republican president? And then I know Bill Kristol got into some heat similarly with his group, I guess the Bulwark, or one of his outlets or something, was taking money from like a liberal philanthropist, and there was an insinuation that was somehow like tainted. Then I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I mean, the Lincoln Project is going beyond just going after Trump. They're going after senators.
That's another issue that we should talk about.
Right.
Okay. Look, I get the argument. I think you could make a pretty decent argument that, look, people like Martha McSally and Cory Gardner failed the character test. They failed the courage test. They wouldn't even allow witnesses to testify in an impeachment trial, right? And so I think you can make an argument that says you need to extirpate Trumpism root and branch. You can't just get rid of Trump because that's not going to be enough. Trump, another Trump is going to blossom in his place. That this is like a fundamentally corrupt party right now. And while conservatism may be separate, the party is it's just fundamentally rotten, and you have to get rid of all of them, and hopefully something good will grow back later. I'm not sure that's right. 100%. I get it. I think I've just accurately expressed the argument. I'm not sure it's right. I think it's worth debate.
Well, and it raises unsettling questions for both sides here, because if you're a Republican, you might look at Lincoln Project and say, "Look, you guys, you've gone to the other side completely. You are now opposing the party up and down the ballot in this election."
Which is different from just saying that Trump is the specific problem.
Right.
This is another level.
Now, the Lincoln Project folks would say we need to eradicate Trumpism from the party, and this is if you don't get punished for your association with them, we can't fix the party down the road. Now, a progressive Democrat might say, "Hey, wait a second, what's your end game here, buddy? Are you going to leave us as soon as this election is over? Once you've gotten your scalps, that you will then go back to the Republicans and try to make them a more palatable party going forward? Or are you going to stick around our party and try to make us more conservative and say we won't stay with you unless you ignore some of the progressive policy pressure that you're under?" That's going to be a big debate, assuming Biden wins. Who gets the credit for that? Is it because Biden pulled over swing voters and had financial help from former Republicans? Or is it because the progressive base showed up in big numbers and didn't abandon Biden for the Green Party or whatnot, and they should be rewarded for their loyalty? Biden's going to get tons of cross pressure the minute he's inaugurated, assuming he's inaugurated. And the more the Lincoln Project raises money and the more ads they do air on TV, the more credit they will take for themselves and arguably try to make the case that Biden should be careful how far left he goes because he needed this help from us. Now, just to give a sense of the numbers here, I mentioned before, so Biden raised $141 million in June alone and has $242 million cash on hand. So that's a lot more than the Lincoln Project $17 million, I think, for the quarter, the second quarter. At the same time, other Senate candidates got less than $17 million. I think most of them got less than $17 million. That's kind of a confusing metric because, say, Barbara Bollier in Kansas got $3.4 million or $3.7 for the quarter. That's a record for Kansas. It's a record quarter for Kansas. So she's not in bad shape, but there's money on the table here that still could have gone to her. It's still uphill in Kansas. You want her to have a lot of money. You want her to break even bigger records. So that's why it's a little hard to do apples to apples comparisons here. And in the case of Biden, he has a lot of money, but still, it's a big country, and he's still hesitating on going big on Texas, even with the amount of money that he has. So everything is expensive and complicated and hard to decide where the money is best spent.
Indeed. Well, I heard you gave a talk about vice presidents, about the Veep stakes. How did it go?
It went well. This is for a local group, but it was on Zoom, so people can find it on YouTube now. If they Google my name and VP, I think it will come up. Hello.
Hello. I want lunch.
I can't help you with lunch just right now. You have to wait a little bit.
I want a cookie. Can I have a cookie?
No, we need to have lunch first.
Fine.
And so I just kind of walked through what I thought was every possible factor that a nominee would consider in making this decision, both in general and specific to 2020, and how that applies when you go down the list of each individual prospect. And I do think that, a lot of vice presidential talk is kind of, parlor game, fun, office, politics, not necessarily important for actually winning the race or governing. But I do think this is a different VP consideration. This is someone who could very well be the nominee in 2024. Even though Biden's not saying he's a one-termer, it's still a strong possibility. It's an ideologically unsettled party. VPs tend to be the next nominees, Biden being the most recent example of that. So he really could be setting the course for the party for the next decade in this decision,
Right.
And that just adds to the stakes. It adds to the importance of it. And without going through the entire talk, which I'm happy for you guys to listen to in your spare time, one factor I had was that I think a lot of people in the party want it to be a woman of color, precisely so that person is queued up for 2024. Now, you had a column from George Will recently hyping Karen Bass and saying Karen Bass is, and I think there was also an Atlantic article also saying Karen Bass is being seriously considered. Jim Clyburn in the Will column said one of the advantages to Bass is that she's 67 and she is not interested in running for president. She doesn't have that ambition. And the Atlantic article argued that some people close to Biden say that Biden is concerned about being overshadowed and would like somebody who wasn't going to be the nominee in waiting, and then the party can fight it out in 2024. I have to say, that doesn't sound like Biden to me. I don't accept at face value that Biden is worried about being upstage. I think Biden has been a more magnanimous sort. He has said himself, he sees himself as a bridge candidate, a transition to the next generation. He's gone out of his way to elevate Buttigieg and elevate Kamala, talk about them as next generation leaders. So that doesn't feel right to me. And I do think it would disappoint a good part of the base. If you're picking a black woman and implicitly saying she's not getting promoted, I didn't want to promote an African American woman. What are you saying there? Are you saying this is window dressing? Are you saying this is a token pick? The whole idea is that you were saying this person is so qualified and so great that I think she can be president at a moment's notice. So again, I can't read Biden's mind, but I do think he needs to be careful about how that is portrayed. If it is true that he doesn't want to be overshadowed like that. So even though there's been a Bass boomlet, there's been a Duckworth boomlet coming off of her scrap with Tucker Carlson, you're still seeing activists push Warren. There's a Warren op-ed saying she's the best.
And by the way, Bill, I had to leave my fishing trip with Tucker to be here with you today. So
we should talk about Tucker versus Hannity in a little bit for 2024.
You were honored. I've left our fishing trip for this. But.
I still feel like Kamala is the Joe Biden of the deep stakes race. She doesn't get the hot takes. She's seen as a little too obvious. But I can't know if there's something in the vet that would disqualify her or anybody else for that matter. But I still think on paper, she makes the most sense in being able to both satisfy a good portion of the base without running a risk of being alienating to the swing. I'm not convinced that Bass can do that because I'm not sure she would excite the base as much. I'm not convinced that Duckworth acquitted herself well in the Tucker scrap, although I think she could possibly further acquit herself if she did more media appearances that didn't result in gaffes that would be able to say, hey, that George Washington was a one-time, little blip. I'm not generally a risk on TV. Val Demings got hit hard with a police brutality.
I don't always attack our founding fathers, right. But when I do,
I make up for it. There's a big article about Val Demings and police brutality, which I've talked about before. I think it was the first person to flag that she had potential police brutality issues. Politico went a lot deeper into that. I think that probably decreased her stock value. And Warren, I still think, runs the risk of alienating the swing and hasn't done anything to really mitigate that. You know, her champions are still on the activist left. So I still see Kamala as being having the pole position here.
Yeah, I think so too. When wasn't the Democratic convention supposed to be this week?
Yeah. I think it was
when is this going to happen? I know the Republicans keep, moving around what they're doing. Now it's going to be outside mostly in Jacksonville, I think. But when did the Democrats? When are they going to nominate them? When does this happen?
They have the dates. Forgive me. August 17th to 20th. So I assume he's nominated on the 20th. So he literally couldn't. He could nominate on the 19th. I was just Steve Kornacki put up a video of Reagan nominating George Bush, on the convention floor in 1980. And I said, I think this was the last time this happened at the convention. And Kornacki corrected me. No, 1992. Dan Quayle, it wasn't on the floor. It was at a side event. But on day 2 of the 92 convention, Bush comes down to New Orleans and nominates Dan Quayle at an afternoon event. So, Biden could do that. I don't know it's going to wait that long, but he has been signaling early to mid-August here. So it's not that far away. So we could have
4 or 5 more weeks of this. Why not milk it, right? Why not?
I see no rush. Do the vet. Get your vet right.
Take the time.
You don't want a surprise. You don't want to not cross your T's and dot your I's. There's no.
Plus, something could happen. Like something could happen in the world that would make somebody a better or worse pick.
That's true. And I think you want the press to do their vets.
Yes.
If Val Demings can address the police brutality that happened on her watch as police chief, if she can address it now and show she can handle those questions, that's good for her. Good to Duckworth.
Plus, if you get commentators on the record, like defending her against it now, it's harder for them to reverse if he picks her.
One mistake I think Demings is making is that she has been silent since that article came out over the weekend. She should be out there. She should be taking the questions and showing she can handle them. And the same with Duckworth, too. I haven't seen Duckworth since she was in the New York Times op-ed. Prove your mettle. Now, there are a lot of times when going low-key makes sense for VP. Tim Kaine didn't do a whole media circuit for getting VP, but he was a different kind of pick. He was meant to be a low-key pick. And most VPs aren't the star attraction, and so it's not necessary for them to be media stars. But I do think this is going to be looked at as a likely president in waiting. They'll have a ton of scrutiny put upon them. They will get on TV upon being nominated, and they better hit that ground running and not make mistakes and not be caught with a public vetting after the pick that becomes awkward to deal with. So use the time. Biden should use the time, and the prospects should use the time to get any weaknesses out in the open and addressed.
Bill, we had a request for a DMZ focused topic. Are we going to do that?
Yeah, we should do that.
What do you think?
So one of our longtime listeners asked us to look at the so-called 13 keys. This was a book by Professor Alan Lichtman. He came up with the keys in the early 80s. He had a book in the early 90s. And so this is, before the days of data journalism and statistical modeling. We said, these are the 13 keys, and if 8 of the 13 are true, then the incumbent wins, and if 7 or more are false, then the challenger wins. And he argued that this has always been proven true, and he predicted Trump based on this before, and one thing that gets confusing with it is, are you talking about popular voter or electoral college? Because I think it pointed to Gore in 2000. You could say, well, he won the popular vote, so I wasn't wrong. But then it's a different standard for Trump in 2016. But on the whole, I like the keys because I think, the statistical models, the 538s and the upshots and whatnot, they give you probabilities.
Yeah.
And I don't need a model to tell me that Biden is likely to win. I know Biden is likely to win. I can tell that from polling. Taking your polls and sticking in a model with a bunch of other outside factors to give me a precise number of the probability, that's nice, but I know he's likely to win. The keys is a little gutsier. He's saying this person is going to win based on this. And so these are the keys. Do you want to run through them and we can talk about them, or do you want to save it for next week?
No,
I'll run through them.
Okay.
Number one is,
just go through each one and we'll both weigh in.
So number one is party mandate. After the midterm elections, the incumbent party holds more seats in the U.S. House than previous. So that is objectively not true in this case.
I disagree. Okay. Agree to disagree.
There are alternative facts about who won the midterm election. Number two.
That's your opinion.
Number two, contest. There's no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. So, there was Bill Weld and Joe Walsh, but not a serious contest. That's a point for Trump.
So it's 1-1 right now.
Yeah.
1 point for, 1 point against. Okay.
Right. Incumbency. The incumbent party candidate is a sitting president. That is objectively Trump. That's a 1 for Trump. Now,
that's your opinion.
Now, the fourth key, I think, is wrong. I think this is a wrong criteria, which is third party. There is no significant third party or independent campaign. So if there's no significant campaign, that is a positive, that is a 1 for Trump in this telling. And I think in this case, Trump would like there to be a significant third-party campaign. This may have been true in a lot of other cases. In this case, the fact that there's no third party is a positive for Biden. But following the Lichtman philosophy, I have to count this as a point for Trump. Even though I think
so we're 2-2.
Well, right now,
right
now Trump has three keys, one Biden, based on the Lichtman telling. 5 is short-term economy. The economy is not in recession during the election campaign. Obviously, we are in a recession right now. That's a point for Biden. 6 is long-term economy.
So we're 3-2.
3-2. 6 is long-term economy. Real per capita economic growth during the term equals or exceeds mean growth during the previous 2 terms. Now, I haven't looked at the number, but I have to think that with the current devastation, that the Obama 2 terms are ahead of the Trump term on this score. Someone in the comments might correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's a point for Biden right now, and that makes it 3-3.
So it would be 3-3.
Yeah. Now maybe that changes by maybe it'll fall somehow, but I don't think so. 7, policy change. The incumbent administration affects major changes in national policy. I would say that's a 1 for Trump. Good or bad.
I don't know.
I mean, I would say tax bill alone, I would say, is a major change.
I'm not sure. I don't know about that one. I think I would say no.
I mean, the one thing about this, which I think is tricky, is that there is a level of subjectivity here that makes it imperfect.
I think Obamacare would clearly be a yes, right? Sure. And I think, does this have to be policy? I mean, could it be the Iraq War would have been
the foreign policies later.
Okay, so this would be the domestic policy.
I think that's implied here, yes, based on the other keys.
Okay. So, I mean, I think Obamacare definitely would have counted. I don't know. But doing it.
I would say a tax reform bill counts and give that to Trump.
Okay, so what's our score?
So we're giving it to Trump. That would be 4 Trump, 3 Biden.
Okay.
Social unrest. There's no sustained social unrest during the term. I think I think we have to give that to Biden. So that puts us at 4-4. Scandal. The current administration is untainted by major scandal. Again, point for Biden here. Then we have 2 foreign policy criteria. Failure and success. The current administration suffers no major failure in foreign or military affairs.
I guess you have to give that one to Trump.
No failure? North Korea's not a failure?
I mean,
he wanted a peace agreement, he didn't get it.
Look, I think Trump's foreign policy is a disaster, but if you're putting points on the scoreboard, I don't know that there's any like definitive failure. Whereas, like, let's say the helicopters in Iran, that would have been like a huge disaster, or the hostage crisis.
I think if you have a stated goal that you don't meet, that's a failure.
I feel like when he says failure, I mean, was by that standard, like Reagan's, negotiating like with Russia would have been deemed a failure up until like the end. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you didn't meet an objective.
But he beat Grenada, so that's a positive, So, I mean, it's if it's somehow incomplete, you might say it's not a failure. He wanted to deal with Kim Jong-un now and not have North Korea building more nuclear weapons. And North Korea's building more nuclear weapons, and there's no deal.
Well, let me ask you this, Bill. Has Lichtman weighed in on these as it pertains to Trump lately?
I don't think he's done his formal prediction yet.
Okay, because I know, like, I saw him I think it was him on Real Time a year or two ago, yeah. But a lot has changed since then. I'd love to know, does he agree with you? But since you're reading this, I'm going to just defer to you. So what's the score according to your ranking?
According to my rankings now, I have Trump has 4 and Biden has 7. So based on what I have, I'm sorry, Biden has 6. I'm sorry, Biden has 6. 4 to 6. So then there's foreign military success. The current administration achieves a major success in foreign military affairs. Would you say there's a success that Trump can herald?
I mean, he could argue that withdrawing from Afghanistan is a military success, or bombing Syria is a military success.
I agree with that.
I don't view them as successes, even though that doesn't say it's not good. I just don't. It's not like a win in my.
I think achieving a goal that you set for yourself, I think that is a success based on my reading of this. So I would give that to Trump. That would put him at 5.
You're a very generous God.
Now, again, last 2. Again, here's a case where it is subjective, and they're both involving charisma. The incumbent party candidate is a charismatic or national hero. I would say Trump is charismatic. I mean, whether you like it or not.
Had me until hero.
Well,
had me until hero.
Charismatic or national hero.
So he's charismatic, or he's a national hero.
Correct.
Okay, then I say yes. I say yes, he is charismatic.
And the other is the challenging party candidate not charismatic or a national hero? I think
that's awesome.
I think Biden has charisma.
Come on.
But Biden has a way. There are people who are genuinely connected to Biden. What's that?
Anybody in politics, you could, like, Al Gore had a certain charm, I'm sure. But Joe Biden's not somebody you think of as being charismatic. I'm going to have to.
Okay, I'll do it your way for the purposes of this exercise. So having said that, that gives Trump a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives him 7. That is 1 short of what he needs. He needs 8. Now, granted, if we went the Matt Lewis way, I think you would have canceled each other out because you would have not given Trump a point on policy, and you have given Trump a point on not having a foreign policy failure, so it would have been the same anyway.
So either way, Trump would have lost. And if we'd gone strictly with your gut, he would have lost a little worse.
Right. And now, there's subjectivity here. So I don't think this is a perfect model. But I feel like this does get at the heart of what these elections turn on in a way that statistical modeling and probability does not.
Well, the modeling is on like turnout expectations and polling, right? It's not based on this is different criteria than you would ever get from. This is
what's happening in the world and what's happening politically within the incumbent party and with third parties. And there's a certain element of candidate quality as well.
It's an interesting exercise, and I think it does show you why there could be like a wag the dog thing. If a president needs to have a foreign policy win an objective met, we could bomb Canada. I think it shows you how the economy, if it turned, that would be the difference. So it does highlight, it paints a picture and it helps you understand the campaign in a way that just looking at the polls wouldn't do.
And now this is also something where the thing I don't like about it is that all of these keys have equal import. Whereas I might argue the two economic ones, really should carry more weight than some of the other stuff.
Well, that's why there are two. There's two economic ones. Right. Maybe that's why.
Well, and that's true, but, shouldn't the mere fact of incumbency, should that be a free point to Trump? The fact that he's an incumbent is bad for him right now, as evidenced by these other keys. No,
but I think historically speaking, it's clear that incumbency is an advantage.
If Trump quit now, would Pence or another draft pick be a more likely candidate to win than Trump himself?
Probably.
That's the one element here that I think it's a little. It's hard to pick a model that really captures every nuance and idiosyncrasy of every individual election. But be that as it may, arguably the wrongs of the model are negated when you put it all together and you end up with the right most of the time.
Well, this was a good exercise. What we should do is slightly change them and rebrand it as the Scher model. And every 4 years, we can rate them. But so thank you to the loyal viewer who threw that idea out there. And for those who say that we don't take requests, well, take that.
Are we zooming this week, Matt?
Let's talk about it. I have mixed emotions. Part of the problem is I was hoping that we could have a few days in between.
Yeah.
Normally we'll tape this on a Wednesday morning, and then we'll DM Zoom on a Friday late afternoon, early evening. That gives us 2.5 days to recover and for new news to develop. This week we'll have 24 hours. So,
we could push off to early next week if you wanted.
Let's discuss.
Okay, we'll discuss. Let's stay tuned.
Or do we need to make? Do you want to? I have it on my schedule. I have the time. If you just want to make an executive decision and say we will be here for you, and if Bill and I don't have anything to say, then I'm sure we will, because we always do.
I'm sure we can find something to talk about.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so Friday is on. If you're already you're already in our Patreon, you'll get the notice. If you're not and you want to give us some of your hard-earned money, sign up on Patreon now, and you can be part of our Patreon chats going forward. Just so folks know, I'm working hard on my podcast. The money for me is supposed to be for my podcast. It's not just supposed to be through the Zoom chats. just to give folks an update, I am in the home stretch on the audio editing. I think I've done my last take, and so I am moving apace on that project.
Excellent. And thank you for those who support my podcast. I interviewed Joe Ridota, who is a opposition research guru, nicknamed Dr. Death.
Ooh.
He started doing oppo on the Reagan, during the Reagan administration. And we had this like long conversation about opposition research, like the history of it, crazy stories, what he would do if he were going to research me, how he would put together a dossier to take me down. Fascinating discussion. That's coming out soon on the podcast. And I also interviewed a professor named Thomas Main. He had a book out. I interviewed him a couple years ago called The Rise of the Alt-Right. And he has a new book coming out about illiberalism. And we actually got into a little bit of a debate because although he and I agree that illiberalism on the right is a real problem, he doesn't think it's nearly as big of a problem on the left as I do. And so we had that debate, and I think it's worth listening to. Check it out. Matt Lewis in the News, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for supporting us on Patreon.
All right. Till tomorrow, Zoom. Until next week. We'll talk then.
All right. See you guys.